This is the story of the one. As a custodial supervisor at a high school, he knows that during cold and flu season, germs spread fast. It's why he partners with Grainger to stay fully stocked on the products and supplies he needs, from tissues to disinfectants to floor scrubbers. All so that he can help students, staff, and teachers stay healthy and focused. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
Now, Norm, I remember years ago you told me that you were there for the birth of your son, and I always remember this. And you said that was the most exciting thing you had ever participated in. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yes. And then what happened?
I took crystal meth.
No, you didn't.
I didn't know what you were getting
No,
at.
that's right. No, and then he said a couple of weeks later you went skydiving.
Oh, was that it?
Yeah, that was what it was. Yeah. Or hang gliding. Yeah, hang gliding. And how was that compared to the birth? It was.
This was a joke I did at one point?
I have to do your act for you now? Is that what it's come to? And you said that was much more exciting than the birth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what's.
Good morning. It's Saturday, Rules Saturday, September the 20th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have motivation, meditation, no free lunch, and return of the primitive. All that and more when I get back. God, Grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David Bahnsen.
The natural cycle of business. Companies are born, companies die, capitalism moves forward. Thomas Sowell. The biggest mistake one could make is to interpret this sentiment as insensitive to the plight of those who hurt in this process. Nothing could be further from the truth. The creative destruction of a market economy is all at once destructive to one group in the short term while being constructive for all groups in the long term. How does the failure of one business in one moment of time benefit everyone long term? Because if we did not have a system where a business could fail, we would not have a system where any could succeed. And that would mean the death of prosperity and opportunity.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from the Rules for Anti-Radicals, Dirty Debate Tricks. And this is actually derived from 10 bullying debate techniques from Ben Shapiro. Number 1, get under your opponent's skin. And what this reminds me of is William F. Buckley Jr. was once going to get into a debate with somebody, and they called him a crypto-Nazi. And he flew into a rage. So, get under your opponent's skin. Strike when they overreact, i.e. gaslighting. Manipulate the victim into overreacting, getting under their skin. Remain calm as they overreact, and point out to the victim that they are overreacting and or acting crazy and aggressive. 3, conveying authority by talking like you're speaking the gospel. 4, ridicule your opponent subtly. 5, use or bend data and statistics to increase your authority. 6, play the victim. 7, hide your power source. 8, accuse your opponent of your own faults. I call this projection, and it is commonly used by leftists. If you accuse your opponent of doing something you yourself are guilty of, it sounds like copycatting when he finally points it out in your behavior. Frame the interaction the way it serves you. Whoever gets to frame the interaction holds a huge advantage in debates. 10, seek peace only when they're on their knees. If debating aggressively, offering an olive branch once you have trounced them will make you look magnanimous. And that was from the Rules for Anti-Radicals. Next week will be part 2, Activist Tools and Tactics, the Basics. And this book is by F. Paul Vallone. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, rules for retrogrades.
Rule 10. Radicals who manipulate language must be beaten at their own game, and then in many other venues as well, decisively, definitively, and mercilessly. After all, we strive against the powers and principalities. The retrogrades' fight involves the reclamation of the aching West from the furious clutches of devils. More importantly still, the fight is waged for the very souls of bystanders and moderates. So, use a little showmanship. Make it a spectacle to behold. Beat a radical in a debate. Look good doing it, and then challenge him to a boxing match. The former contest wins minds. The latter wins hearts. You never know whether a listener will be converted by heart or mind first, meaning that both approaches are needful. The retrograde can afford to neglect neither. At this late hour, retrogrades need victories across multiple venues. If, for example, a smug radical talk show host challenges a square conservative senator to a public one-on-one basketball game, or vice versa, it is insufficient to the task that the senator beats the talk show host by a score of 15-14. This is actually a loss, not a victory. Consult history if the reader fails to believe it. Footnote, Ted Cruz versus Jimmy Kimmel public basketball game on June 16, 2018. End of footnote. A marginal victory in a symbolic basketball game of this sort amounts to a nullity, or worse. Will anyone remember a less than heroic victory by the senator over the mouthy talk show host? Negative. A forgettable performance is a regrettable performance because it leaves the retrograde in the same position he was in before, except he looks dogged and overwrought in the effort spent. The only true victory is a stark one, with public contests of this sort, which are the ultimate manner of demonstrating to both types of moderate that retrogrades are anything but the uninteresting, untalented, unidimensional Puritans they've taken us to be. On the contrary, retrogrades must be cultivated savages, with the motto from Braveheart, ego nunquam pronunciare mendacium, sed ego sum homo indomitus. But again, In order to prove this to anybody, you have to win. And win handsomely. In order to do that, you've got to be sitting on talent aside from book smarts. The need for landslide victories also goes for boxing matches, one of my favorite alternatives to verbal forensics. Foot races, spelling contests, chess matches, ring tosses, poker tournaments, geography bees, etc. Although it may be puerile, it is also rather classical to resolve otherwise irreconcilable ideological differences, in the public arena anyway, with some other praiseworthy and manly metric. Since the days of ancient Greeks, certain types of contest between two parties making adverse claims have proven relevant to the public. Such contests turn out to be alternative ways of showing the world, or even just radical family members back home for the holidays, the manly and virtuous merits of the retrograde worldview, the darkling genius of Christendom. Most people are readier to cede personal respect than intellectual respect. Even my liberal students are willing to listen to one of my lectures after they've seen me handle a basketball. The true retrograde is a force majeure, out to show the world the midnightly strength of the righteous man, a cultivated savage and a principled conqueror. Again, his motto is that of William Wallace, cited above, "I never lie, but I am a savage." Or failing that, the retrograde may just be the principled mentor to a conqueror, in the case of the teacher of Alexander the Great and student of Plato, Aristotle. Aristotle is the Mac Daddy and godfather of all polymath retrogrades, whose many Western civilization forging fields of experience include physics, metaphysics, poetry, theater, music, logic, rhetoric, politics, ethics, biology, and zoology. The men of 76, America's retrograde revolutionary founders, needed to be comprised largely of polymaths for the simple reason that backward-looking revolutionaries require loyal throngs of followers, necessitating charismatic chieftains, men of many parts and maestros of multiple simultaneous talents. American retrograde Thomas Jefferson, a polyglot, fluent in Greek, Latin, French, Spanish, Italian, and German, was also a polymath. Quote, agriculturalist, anthropologist, architect, astronomer, bibliophile, botanist, classicist, diplomat, educator, ethnologist, farmer, geographer, gourmet, horseman, horticulturist, inventor, lawyer, lexicographer, linguist, mathematician, meteorologist, musician, naturalist, numismatist, paleontologist, philosopher, political philosopher, scientist, statesman, violinist, writer, unquote. Footnote. That was from jeffersonia.wordpress.com. It takes this sort of multi-venue genius to take down a statist empire. The greater the retrograde's task at hand, the more needful of polymathic genius. And in 2019, restoring America to her former wisdom and beauty requires as many moral, intellectual, physical geniuses as can be mustered from among our ranks. There's no time for sitting passively on the couch. Retrogrades, to your training stations.
And that was Rule 10 from Rules for Retrogrades, 40 Tactics to Defeat the Radical Left by Timothy J. and David R. Gordon. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from the book called Waking the Sleeping Giant. Tactic 1, ride the appeasement cycle to power. An especially difficult realization that we must face head on is that those of us in the mainstream are part of the problem. We outnumber the bullies of the left by a large margin, but we've been raised to be civil and rational. Those are wonderful and helpful traits when dealing with other mainstream citizens who are also civil and rational, but they become our Achilles heel in dealing with liberal bullies. Out of our perfectly healthy and mature desire to live in relative harmony with others, all too often we appease the social tyrants, from the schoolyard bully to the liberal activist, in an effort to keep the peace. When liberals call us racist, we try to convince them that we are not. When they accuse us of hating the poor, we try to convince them that the catastrophic debt hurts job creation, which in turn hurts the poor. When no amount of reasoning or evidence stops the accusations, eventually some well-meaning soul reaches across the aisle and tries to find common ground with the left in an effort to appease them. But when we do so, we have just given our lunch money to the schoolyard bully. In the halls of Congress and on the schoolyard, the bully typically calms down just enough for us to feel that our appeasement has indeed brought us peace. But then the cycle repeats. Social bullies learn to hold out through all of our reasoning and cajoling. They learn that if they continue to whine, demand, accuse, intimidate, and threaten, we will eventually appease or compromise. Every time the cycle repeats, the bully becomes more emboldened. Mainstream Americans learned this on the schoolyard, but we have only recently begun to realize that outfitting the bully with a protest sign or an expensive suit changes nothing. The pattern is the same. Let's see here. The golden rule and the ruckus rule. Basically, the mainstream tries to live by the golden rule. If we don't want others to limit our healthcare choices, then we don't limit the healthcare choices of others. If we don't want others to limit our choices of news and information, then we don't limit the choices of others. We want others to respect our desire to live our lives as we choose within broadly agreed upon limits, and so we respect the desire of others to do the same. In so many ways, the constitutional protections of liberty can be said to derive from a deep cultural respect from the golden rule. However, the left sees the maturity and responsibility of mainstream Americans as the weak point in our defenses. And, as we will see later, because the left rejects the worldview that affirms the golden rule, they feel no obligation to live by the standards that they set for others. Power is the left's ambrosia, and strife is the bowl in which it is served. The left wants power, the mainstream wants peace and quiet, and the left knows that. And so we see the appeasement cycle played out over and over, with each cycle wearing away our liberty and increasing the power of the left. Sure enough, the left is willing to allow us peace and quiet for a time, but at a price. The price is never very high at any one time. Just compromise on this or that, conform your behavior to their demands just a tad here and there, and they'll quiet down and be nice. For a while. The pattern of political life in the United States for the last century, complicated as it might seem on the surface, is frighteningly simple. It is the same pattern that we see with toddlers having temper tantrums to get a toy or schoolyard bullies threatening violence in order to get someone else's lunch money. Because we let them. For liberal tactics to work, however, remember that the rest of us have to attempt to appease them. But appeasement didn't work with Neville Chamberlain, tried it with Hitler. Instead of winning peace in our time by appeasing Hitler, he emboldened Hitler. With each victory liberals achieve as a result of well-intentioned appeasement from the mainstream, they get bolder in their demands as well as in their tactics. The parallel is striking and frightening. In dealing with liberal bullies, the mainstream can do no better than recall the old maxim that throwing red meat to a tiger will not turn him into a vegetarian. We'll go into more detail about the mainstream and liberal character differences behind the appeasement cycle in a later chapter. We will also offer tools and techniques for breaking that cycle. For now, let's just say that compromise is only sensible when both sides share the same goals. Compromise is self-destructive, however, when used to appease political bullies. And that was Tactic 1 from the book Waking the Sleeping Giant. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of motivation.
To every person in this room who's had a struggle, who's had some pains, who's had some tests, who's got some creative ideas, but you've gone through some really tough stuff. Whatever you do, don't lose your head. Pull your feelings out of it. Your emotions, your negative thoughts, your insecurities, your vulnerabilities. Do not allow these things to control the trajectory of your life. If you are going to birth your dream, your calling, your passion,
You can't draw back when life gets tough. You've got to stand up to it and push.
Push through it. Tragedy and trials come to everybody. Only the strong survive.
The stuff you've been through, don't pay it any attention.
If you start something, you're going to finish it. Make a way. Figure it out, adjust, pivot, have a certain level of mental agility, and get it done. Keep going. Press on. This too shall pass. There's nothing that we come up against that's stronger than anything that we possess internally.
The world is not giving you what you deserve because you don't think you deserve it. And you need to change your mindset. Why are you timid? Why are you passive? Why are you afraid?
There are those of you in this room, you don't need another book. You don't need another course. There are those of you in this room, you don't need to do anything else. You are enough as you are. You just don't believe in yourself in the way you're supposed to believe in yourself, and it comes out when you're talking to other people. They sense that you don't believe it. They feel it. You can feel when somebody's not committed, when they're not all in, when they're not dedicated. And there's another level you get to when you go all in. When you come to an engagement and you speak as if you're making the most you've ever made when you're not. When you get up at 6, when you don't have to. And if you change your mindset is important because we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use to create them. You gotta change the way you think. All you need to do is change your thinking and you change your world. You don't need to change anything else. Don't complain. Don't murmur. Don't talk negative. Average people talk normal. Average people talk problem. The greats talk solutions. Average people use their time to whine and complain. But I used to be average. And when I would talk like that, I ended up getting kicked out of school. And when I talked like that, I was broke. And then one day I woke up and said, Eric, nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to get you, but you can go to the library and get yourself. You can start reading books. You can go back to school. You can start coming to conferences.
There's something that you could do that would radically change your life. Somebody could take the hand you've been dealt and win with it. Same circumstances, same ideas. They would do it through what they thought about your life. But we don't need somebody because we got you. You are the one. I haven't had my best idea yet. I haven't had my most creative moment yet. I haven't produced my dream yet. I don't care whether you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. There's something down inside of you that's still kicking inside of you that wants to get out and it wants to live.
I want you to leave this room and embrace challenges. Stop quitting and giving up.
If it's hard, keep on coming back again. If folk oppose you, come on back again. Run out of money? Come back again. Keep working on yourself. Keep talking to yourself. Many start, but few finish. Few people finish because they say, well, it was hard, and they stop. They take that as a stop sign as opposed to a growth sign. They look at that as something to block them as opposed to an opportunity for them to grow, to become more creative.
All roads to success, you gotta go through pain. When you travel down success, you gotta go through the road of pain, baby. If you think it's gonna be easy, if you think you're just gonna get that business started without any trials or tribulations, forget about it. Don't even try to be successful. It's a wrap. It's not going to be easy, but I want you to feel that pain going through your body. And as pain leaves your body, guess what's going to take its place? Success. And so you got to change your mindset. We got to stop looking at pain as if it's something negative. No pain, no gain. Confidence makes you run toward the fight. When you don't have confidence, it makes you run away. So it doesn't matter how you look. It doesn't matter the degrees you have. It doesn't matter how much money. It doesn't matter. Without confidence, there are certain things in this earthly realm you can't pull out. When you have fear, fear makes you speak in a certain way. When you have fear, but when you have faith, you don't need to count. When you have faith, you don't need to go outside. When you have faith, you don't need to see how many horses. When you have faith, you don't need to see how many armies. When you have faith, you don't need to see how many swords. When you have faith, you don't need to count no shields. When you have faith, you don't need to look at the parameter and see how many against. When you have faith, you just believe and it'll happen.
As you're going through your go-through, you ready to quit, you ready to give up, you ready to give in because it don't look like you think it should look. And I'm telling you right now, because I care about you. I'm telling you right now, because I've been there. I've done that. You've been in it for 3 years and you about to quit. Bro, you've been doing it for 5 years and it don't look like you think. You put all your money in it. You put all your time in it. People are looking at you crazy. 5 years you've invested. Oh, you put too much in it to quit now? Oh,
thought you were going to get. So maybe I'm not meant to be a lawyer. Most people retreat during the pain, are broken by the pain. But gladiators approach the pain, embrace the pain, and dominate the pain. The question is, are you a gladiator? I guarantee you, if you can outlast pain, if you can get through that pain, if you can outlast that discomfort, I guarantee you, baby, on the other side of it is success.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of meditation.
Welcome to this 5-minute guided meditation to let go, relax, and simply be. Find a comfortable position, gently close your eyes, and allow yourself to settle. This is your time, a moment of peace, a moment of presence. Take a slow, deep breath in. Hold for a moment and gently exhale, releasing all tension. With each breath in, invite calm. With each breath out, let go of stress, anxiety, or any worries you've been carrying. Bring your awareness to the top of your head. Imagine a soft wave of relaxation slowly flowing down. Feel your forehead soften, your shoulders drop, your chest open. Let this gentle wave relax your arms, your hands, your legs, all the way down to your feet. Your whole body is now calm, light, and free. Now imagine placing every thought, every worry into a small balloon. With each exhale, release the balloon into the sky, watching it drift away. You don't need to control, to fix, or to do anything right now. You are safe to simply let go. Allow yourself to rest in this stillness, to relax deeply, to just be. Take one more deep breath in and exhale fully. Gently bring awareness back to your body. Feel the ground beneath you, the space around you. And when you are ready, softly open your eyes, carrying this sense of peace and presence with you into the rest of your day. Thank you for being here. See you in the next meditation.
And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, a little bit of George Meloni.
Important, auquel même à distance je souhaite apporter ma contribution. Et merci de l'avoir intitulé La droite qui gagne, car nous devons transmettre clairement le message que nous sommes prêts, partout dans le monde, à assumer la responsabilité gouvernementale. Dans certains cas, comme en Italie, cela a été déjà produit. Dans d'autres, il faudra plus de temps. Pour certains, ce sera plus aisé, pour d'autres, très difficile. Mais nous sommes toujours prêts et capables de le faire. Depuis mes années d'engagement militant dans le mouvement de jeunesse, j'ai toujours cru que les idées ne pouvaient pas vivre sans action. J'ai toujours pensé qu'il est indispensable de se battre en première ligne pour affirmer sa vision du monde en assumant des responsabilités. Et c'est précisément pour cela que je veux rendre un hommage sincère à Charlie Kirk, un jeune homme, un père courageux, qui a payé de sa vie le courage de ses idées et le prix de sa liberté. Son sacrifice nous rappelle, une fois encore, de quel côté se trouve la violence et l'intolérance. Et je veux dire haut et fort à tous les semeurs de haine, à ceux qui passent leur existence à diaboliser l'adversaire politique et qui ensuite trouvent des justifications hypocrites, même aux crimes les plus odieux. Nous ne tomberons pas dans le jeu sordide. Nous ne leur permettrons pas d'entraîner nos nations dans cette spirale d'haine et de violence. Mais je vais aussi dire avec la même fermeté que nous ne nous laisserons pas intimider et que nous continuerons à nous battre avec la force tranquille de nos idées. C'est cet esprit qui me guide depuis que j'ai assumé la charge la plus importante de ma vie, après celle de maire, celle de diriger le gouvernement italien. En 2022, nous avons gagné avant tout parce que nous avons replacé la politique au centre. Nous nous sommes présentés aux élections avec une coalition et un programme commun, avec la volonté de représenter une alternative claire à la gauche et de mettre fin à une longue période de gouvernement technique et d'alliances politiques aussi contre nature qu'infructueuses. En Italie, nous avons démontré que la droite non seulement est capable de gagner les élections, mais surtout de gouverner. Je suis fier de présider ce qui s'apprête à devenir le troisième gouvernement le plus durable de l'histoire de la République italienne, mais je suis encore plus fier des résultats que nous avons obtenus. Un record.
And that was a little bit of Georgia Meloni in French. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the next part of Chapter 3 of the book, Return of the Primitive, The Anti-Industrial Revolution by Ayn Rand.
The modern college or university, they said, should be run by the students and the professors. Administrators would be maintenance, clerical, and safety personnel, whose purpose is to enforce the will of faculty and students. A manifesto to this effect was adopted at a meeting held at the University of Pennsylvania and attended by 200 youths from 39 colleges in the Philadelphia and New York areas, Harvard, Yale, the University of California at Berkeley, and from schools in the Midwest. A recurring theme in the meeting was that colleges and universities had become servants of the financial, industrial, and military establishment, and that students and faculty were being sold down the river by administrators. Among the provisions of the manifesto were declarations of freedom to join, organize, or hold meetings of any organization, abolition of tuition fees, control of law enforcement by the students and faculty, an end to the Reserve Officer Training Corps, abolition of loyalty oaths, student-faculty control over curriculum. The method used to adopt that manifesto is illuminating. About 200 students attended the meeting, 45 remaining until the end when the Student Bill of Rights was adopted. So much for democratic procedures and for the activists' right to the title of spokesman for American youth. What significance is ascribed to the student rebellion by all these reports and by the authorities they choose to quote? Moral courage is not a characteristic of today's culture, but in no other contemporary issue has moral cowardice been revealed to such a naked, ugly extent. Not only do most of the commentators lack an independent evaluation of the events, not only do they take their cue from the rebels, but of all the rebels' complaints, it is the most superficial, irrelevant, and therefore the safest that they choose to support and to accept as the cause of the rebellion, the complaint that the universities have grown too big. As if they had mushroomed overnight, the bigness of the universities is suddenly decried by the consensus as a national problem and blamed for the unrest of the students, whose motives are hailed as youthful idealism. In today's culture, it has always been safe to attack bigness. And since the meaningless issue of mere size has long served as a means of evading real issues on all sides of all political fences, a new catchphrase has been added to the list of big business, big labor, big government, etc. Big university. For a more sophisticated audience, the socialist magazine, The New Leader, December 21st, 1964, offers a Marxist Freudian appraisal, ascribing the rebellion primarily to alienation. Quoting Savio, "Some people are being separated off from something," and to generational revolt. Spontaneously, the natural idiom of the student political protest was that of sexual protest against the forbidding university administrator who ruled in loco parentis. But the prize for expressing the moral intellectual essence of today's culture should go to Governor Brown of California. Remember that the University of California is a state institution, that its regents are appointed by the governor, and that he therefore was the ultimate target of the revolt, including all its manifestations, from physical violence to filthy language. "Have we made our society safe for students with ideas?" said Governor Brown at a campus dinner. The New York Times, May 22nd, 1965. "We have not. Students have changed, but the structure of the university and its attitudes towards its students have not kept pace with that change. Therefore, some students felt they had the right to go outside the law to force the change. But in so doing, they displayed the height of idealistic hypocrisy. On the one hand, they held up the federal Constitution, demanding their rights of political advocacy. But at the same time, they threw away the principle of due process in favor of direct action. In doing so, they were as wrong as the university. This, then, is the great challenge that faces us, the challenge of change. Consider the fact that Governor Brown is generally regarded as a powerful chief executive and, by California Republicans, as a formidable opponent. Consider the fact that, according to the California Public Opinion Poll, 74% of the people disapprove of the student protest movement in Berkeley. The New Leader, April 12, 1965. Then observe that Governor Brown did not dare denounce a movement led or manipulated by a group of 45 students, and that he felt obliged to qualify the term hypocrisy by the adjective idealistic, thus creating one of the weirdest combinations in today's vocabulary of evasion. Now observe that in all that mass of comments, appraisals, and interpretations, including the ponderous survey in Newsweek, which offered statistics on every imaginable aspect of college life, not one word was said about the content of modern education, about the nature of the ideas that are being inculcated by today's universities. Every possible question was raised and considered except, what are the students taught to think? This, apparently, was what no one dared discuss. This is what we shall now proceed to discuss. If a dramatist had the power to convert philosophical ideas into real flesh and blood people, and attempted to create the walking embodiments of modern philosophy, the result would be the Berkeley Rebels. These activists are so fully, literally, loyally, devastatingly the products of modern philosophy that someone should cry to all the university administrations and faculties, "Brothers, you asked for it." Mankind could not expect to remain unscathed after decades of exposure to the radiation of intellectual fission debris, such as, reason is impotent to know things as they are. Reality is unknowable. Certainty is impossible. Knowledge is mere probability. Truth is that which works. Mind is a superstition. Logic is a social convention. Ethics is a matter of subjective commitment to an arbitrary postulate. And the consequent mutations are those contorted young creatures who scream in chronic terror that they know nothing and want to rule everything. If that dramatist were writing a movie, he could justifiably entitle it Mario Savio, son of Immanuel Kant. With rare and academically neglected exceptions, the philosophical mainstream that seeps into every classroom, subject, and brain in today's universities is epistemological agnosticism, avowed irrationalism, ethical subjectivism. Our age is witnessing the ultimate climax, the cashing in on a long process of destruction at the end of the road laid out by Kant. Ever since Kant divorced reason from reality, his intellectual descendants have been diligently widening the breach. Ever since Kant divorced reason from reality, his intellectual descendants have been diligently widening the breach. In the name of reason, pragmatism established a range-of-the-moment view as an enlightened perspective on life, context dropping as a rule of epistemology, expediency as a principle of morality, and collective subjectivism as a substitute for metaphysics. Logical positivism carried it further, and in the name of reason, elevated the immemorial psychoepistemology of shyster lawyers to the status of a scientific epistemological system by proclaiming that knowledge consists of linguistic manipulations. Taking this seriously, linguistic analysis declared that the task of philosophy is not to identify universal principles, but to tell people what they mean when they speak, which they are otherwise unable to know, which last, by that time, was true in philosophical circles. This was the final stroke of philosophy breaking its moorings and floating off like a lighter-than-air balloon, losing any semblance of connection to reality, any relevance to the problems of man's existence. No matter how cautiously the proponents of such theories skirted any reference to the relationship between theory and practice, no matter how coyly they struggled to treat philosophy as a parlor or classroom game, the fact remained that young people went to college for the purpose of acquiring theoretical knowledge to guide them in practical action. Philosophy teachers evaded questions about the application of their ideas to reality, by such means as declaring that reality is a meaningless term, or by asserting that philosophy has no purpose other than the amusement of manufacturing arbitrary constructs, or by urging students to temper every theory with common sense, the common sense they had spent countless hours trying to invalidate. As a result, a student came out of a modern university with the following sediment left in his brain by his 4 to 8 years of study. Existence is an uncharted, unknowable jungle. Fear and uncertainty are man's permanent state. Skepticism is the mark of maturity. Cynicism is the mark of realism. And above all, the hallmark of an intellectual is the denial of the intellect. When and if academic commentators gave any thought to the practical results of their theories, they were predominantly united in claiming that uncertainty and skepticism are socially valuable traits, which would lead to tolerance of differences, flexibility, social adjustment, and willingness to compromise. Some went so far as to maintain explicitly that intellectual certainty is the mark of a dictatorial mentality, and that chronic doubt, the absence of firm convictions, the lack of absolutes, is the guarantee of a peaceful, democratic society. They miscalculated. It has been said that Kant's dichotomy led to two lines of Kantian philosophers, both accepting his basic premises but choosing opposite sides. Those who chose reason, abandoning reality, and those who chose reality, abandoning reason. The first delivered the world to the second. The collector of the Kantian rationalizer's efforts, the receiver of the bankrupt shambles of sophistry, casuistry, sterility, and abysmal triviality to which they had reduced philosophy, was existentialism. Existentialism, in essence, consists of pointing to modern philosophy and declaring, "Since this is reason, to hell with it." In spite of the fact that the pragmatists, positivists, analysts had obliterated reason, the existentialists accepted them as reason's advocates, held them up to the world as examples of rationality, and proceeded to reject reason altogether, proclaiming its impotence, rebelling against its failure, calling for a return to reality, to the problems of human existence, to values, to action, to subjective values and mindless action. In the name of reality, they proclaimed the moral supremacy of instincts, urges, feelings, and the cognitive powers of stomachs, muscles, kidneys, hearts, blood. It was a rebellion of headless bodies. The battle is not over. The philosophy departments of today's universities are the battleground of a struggle which, in fact, is only a family quarrel between the analysts and the existentialists. Their progeny are the activists of the student rebellion. If these activists choose the policy of doing and then reflecting on your doing, hasn't pragmatism taught them that truth is to be judged by consequences? If they seem unable to formulate or sustain a systematized political theory of society, yet shriek with moral righteousness that they propose to achieve their social goals by physical force, hasn't logical positivism taught them that ethical propositions have no cognitive meaning and are merely a report on one's feelings or the equivalent of emotional ejaculations? If they are savagely blind to everything but the immediate moment, hasn't logical positivism taught them that nothing else can be claimed with certainty to exist? And while the linguistic analysts are busy demonstrating that the cat is on the mat, does not mean that the mat is an attribute of the cat, nor that on the mat is the genus to which the cat belongs, nor yet that the cat equals on the mat. Is it any wonder that students storm the Berkeley campus with placards inscribed, "Strike now, analyze later"? The slogan is quoted by Professor Peterson in the Columbia University Forum. On June 14th, CBS televised a jumbled, incoherent, unintelligible, and for these very reasons, authentic and significant documentary entitled The Berkeley Story. There is method in every kind of madness, and for those acquainted with modern philosophy, that documentary was like a display of sideshow mirrors, throwing off twisted reflections and random echoes of the carnage perpetrated in the academic torture chambers of the mind. "Our generation has no ideology," declared the first boy interviewed, in the tone of defiance and hatred once reserved for saying, "Down with Wall Street," clearly projecting that the enemy now is not the robber barons, but the mind. The older generation, he explained scornfully, had a neat little pill to solve everything, but the pill didn't work and they merely got their hearts busted. We don't believe in pills, he said. We've learned that there are no absolute rules, said a young girl hastily and defensively, as if uttering an axiom, and proceeded to explain inarticulately, with the help of gestures pointing inward, that we make the rules for ourselves, and that what is right for her may not be right for others. A girl described her classes as words, 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 paper, 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 and quietly, in a tone of authentic despair, said that she stopped at times to wonder, what am I doing here? I'm not learning anything. An intense young girl who talked volubly, never quite finishing a sentence nor making a point, was denouncing society in general, trying to say that since people are social products, society has done a bad job. In the middle of a sentence, she stopped and threw in, as a casual aside, whatever way I turn out, I still am a product, then went on. She said it with the simple earnestness of a conscientious child acknowledging a self-evident fact of nature. It was not an act. The poor little creature meant it. The helpless bewilderment on the face of Harry Reasoner, the commentator, when he tried to sum up what he had presented, was an eloquent indication of why the press is unable properly to handle the student rebellion. Now, immediacy, any situation must be solved now, he said incredulously, describing the rebels' attitude, neither praising nor blaming, in the faintly astonished, faintly helpless tone of a man unable to believe that he is seeing savages running loose on the campus of one of America's great universities. Such are the products of modern philosophy. They are the type of students who are too intelligent not to see the logical consequences of the theories they have been taught, but not intelligent nor independent enough to see through the theories and reject them. So they scream their defiance against the system, not realizing that they are its most consistently docile pupils, that theirs is a rebellion against the status quo by its archetypes, against the intellectual establishment by its robots who have swallowed every shop-worn premise of the liberals of the 1930s, including the catchphrases of altruism, the dedication to deprived people, to such a safely conventional cause as the war on poverty. A rebellion that brandishes banners inscribed with bromides is not a very convincing nor very inspiring sight. As in any movement, there is obviously a mixture of motives involved. There are the little shysters of the intellect who have found a gold mine in modern philosophy, who delight in arguing for argument's sake and stumping opponents by means of ready-to-wear paradoxes. There are the little role players who fancy themselves as heroes and enjoy defiance for the sake of defiance. There are the nihilists who, moved by a profound hatred, seek nothing but destruction for the sake of destruction. There are the hopeless dependents who seek to belong to any crowd that would have them. And there are the plain hooligans who are always there on the fringes of any mob action that smells of trouble. Whatever the combination of motives, neurosis is stamped in capital letters across the whole movement, since there is no such thing as rejecting reason through an innocent error of knowledge. But whether the theories of modern philosophy serve merely as a screen, a defense mechanism, a rationalization of neurosis, or are, in part, its cause, the fact remains that modern philosophy has destroyed the best in these students and fostered the worst.
And that was the next part of Chapter 3. Next week will be the last part of Chapter 3 of Ayn Rand's book, Return of the Primitive, The Anti-Industrial Revolution. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that greed is not conservative.